The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website.
The NRD system is unique to Nebraska as a way to manage our natural resources. This year they're celebrating their 50th anniversary of the NRDs. And in addition to managing resources, they also manage some trails. Stay tuned to hear about the trails surrounding Lincoln.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachia. My guest today is Randy Bretz. He's a co-creator here in Lincoln and he's written a book about what makes Lincoln a community. Stay tuned.
Hello everyone and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. Today we have a very special treat for you. We're going to get a walking tour of the Sunken Gardens, a hidden gem in the city of Lincoln, Nebraska. And the park horticulturalist, Steve Nozzle, will be here to tell us everything you need to know. It's going to be great. Don't go away.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Welcome to Live and Learn. The natural resource districts in Nebraska are a unique way of managing our natural resources. I'm Doug Jose, and joining me today is Ariana Kennedy, who is a resource conservationist with the Lower Platte South NRD. That's sort of a mouthful, but
it sure is.
welcome to Live and Learn. This is a unique year for the NRDs. It's the 50th anniversary, and we'll get in that in just a little bit. But how did this NRD system come about? Can you give us a little history?
I sure can. In the late 1960s, the Nebraska State Unicameral passed a bill that created the NRD system. That bill was then signed by Governor Tiemann, and NRDs began operating on July 1st, 1972. Now, the NRDs are charged with the responsibility of conserving and protecting our state's natural resources. Some of those areas include groundwater, flood control, recreation, wildlife habitat, forestry, and erosion control, and there are 23 NRDs in the state of Nebraska.
So they're based on river basins primarily?
Yes, that is correct. So the 23 NRDs are based off major river basins and watersheds. For example, with the Lower Platte South NRD, we're on the lower end of the Platte River,
okay.
And then we are located south of the Platte River, so we are the Lower Platte South NRD. As far as our geographical area, we cover most of Lancaster and Cass counties and portions of Butler, Saunders, Seward, and Otoe counties. And just to give you an idea, that goes as far north as Brainerd, as far west as Garland, as far south as the Princeton-Hallam area, and then as far east as Plattsmouth.
Now, this is the 50th year. Do you have some celebrations to mark this occasion?
Yes, we sure do. Staff has activities going on throughout the summer. We had an event in June out at our Wildwood Lake. It was an outdoor family evening where folks could come out and kayak and fish, and then we had some information on the NRDs and our history. We do have another event coming up in August. That'll be out on the Mopac East Trail, and that event is called See on the Trails. We'll be out there in the evening, and there is one other event that I'd like to tell you about. It's a scavenger hunt, and that is ongoing. We have an activity sheet that contains 16 activities on it, and it's a way for folks to get out and visit our NRD public use areas. For example, you can go to Wildwood Lake and earn 5 points. So each of those activities are worth 5 to 10 points. And once you accumulate 50, you can go ahead and submit that activity sheet to the NRD, and we'll send you some NRD stickers and postcards.
Oh, good. So people can go on the website and
yes.
find out about where
the
to
scavenger
go
hunt.
for that.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about you. Give us a little background on what your role is with the NRD.
Sure. Doug, as you mentioned, I'm the resources conservationist at the NRD, so I am in charge of trail development and trail management. I also work with several land conservation programs, and then I assist with our wildlife management areas and our wetlands. I've been there for over 20 years, and in my free time I do like to ride my bike on the city trails as well as the NRD trails.
Well, let's get into those trails and talk about them. There are trails within the city, but what are the trails that the Lower Platte South NRD has?
Sure. So we have 3 trails. They're all rural. In fact, all three of them used to be abandoned railroad lines.
Okay.
So those three trails are the Mopac East Trail, the Homestead Trail, and the Oak Creek Trail. And those three trails combine for just under 50 miles of trails. And just to let you know, that surface is not concrete. They are actually crushed limestone trails.
Let's talk about the first one, the Mopac Trail, where it goes and what people can see if they go on the trail.
Sure. The Mopac East Trail was the very first NRD trail, and it's actually named after the former railroad line. So it was Missouri Pacific, and then it's been shortened up to the Mopac East Trail. This trail is 22 miles long. It connects to the city of Lincoln's Mopac Trail. On the east edge of Lincoln at 98th Street is where the Lower Platte South NRD picks it up. And we go through Walton, Eagle, Elmwood, and Wabash. And we have 3 trailheads right now, and those are in Eagle, Walton, and Elmwood. And we're currently working on a 4th trailhead at Wabash. That's actually under construction right now, and that should be completed in the next, I'd say the next month or so. And we do have one special feature at our Walton trailhead. We actually have a pet fountain on the water fountain,
Okay.
and that has become quite popular with pet owners that use the Mopac East Trail.
When the trailhead, when you describe that, what do you mean by a trailhead?
Oh,
Is that
sure.
a place where people can come and park their cars and
Yes.
so on?
Yes, yes. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, trailheads. So they are places where you can park your vehicle. There's usually restrooms, and we do have drinking water. So they're a great place to get on the trail.
Okay, the second one that you mentioned is the Oak Creek, and it goes to the west, correct?
Yes, so the Oak Creek Trail, that is located in Valparaiso and goes through Loma and then on up to Brainerd. If you want to do in reverse, you certainly can. You can start in Brainerd if you'd like, go through Loma and end in Valparaiso. That trail is 13 miles long. It is one of our more scenic trails. So from the portion of Valparaiso to Loma, you'll go through some wooded areas, and then once you leave Loma, you start climbing a little bit in elevation, and there's some fantastic scenic views on the way from Loma to Brainerd. And I should mention too that this is a standalone trail. It does not connect to any other trails.
When you say it's scenic, and that to me conveys that there is some up and down to it, so people would have some hills to climb?
Certainly, yes. It is gradual in elevation, which is nice because they were former railroad lines. So it's not going to be extremely hilly, but you may have some gradual inclines and declines, certainly.
And then the third one goes to the south.
Yes, so that would be our Homestead Trail. And that connects to the City of Lincoln's Jamaica North Trail. You can connect with that trail just south of Saltillo Road, and it's going to head south. And at the Lancaster-Gage County line, that is where the NRD portion ends, and the trail actually goes on down to Marysville, Kansas. So there's
Okay.
several entities and organizations that own and maintain the trail once the NRD's portion ends.
So are other NRDs involved in to connect up, or is it other entities within those communities?
Sure, yeah, it's no other NRDs. The City of Beatrice is one of the agencies, and then the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska actually has a portion of the trail too.
So when people go on these trails, well, particularly since this is a live and learn program, what's involved for people like myself, who's, I'd say, a mature person?
Oh, sure. So yeah, our trails are open sunrise to sunset, 365 days a year. One of the best ways to access our trails is actually at one of the trailheads that I had mentioned previously. And folks can park their vehicle there and do some walking on the trails, or if they want to take their bike, they can certainly take their bikes. We do allow e-bikes on our trails as long as they are pedal assist.
Okay.
And then another activity could be wildlife watching or bird watching.
But you don't have any particular activities organized within the trails for the bird watching and so on?
We don't. It's all on your own.
Okay, and then when these trails were developed, you said all three were former railroad beds, right?
Yes.
And is there any interaction with the property owners along trails? You know, sometimes I hear about people complaining about
Sure.
what happens on the trails, but I guess maybe the bigger question is, in the NRD, do they go through these trails periodically for upkeep and so on?
Sure, yes. We do have an excellent NRD maintenance crew, and they keep those trails in great shape for us, certainly. In fact, after high wind or high water events, which it seems like we've had quite a few this spring and summer, our crews will go through and clear any down trees or down limbs, check for some erosion and make those repairs if they can. Unfortunately, sometimes the repairs are beyond our maintenance crew's capabilities, so we may have to hire a contractor to go in and make those repairs. Homestead Trail actually has a portion of the trail closed right now because we had some severe erosion occurring on one of our bridge abutments. So they're working on that right now, and we should hopefully have that trail opened up later this summer.
So the just that part that's closed.
Yes, yes. Folks are more than welcome to use the rest of the trail. That part that's closed is about 1.5 miles, so it's just that sections that is closed.
Ariana, thanks a lot for being with us today and sharing this treasure with us and telling us about the NRDs.
You're welcome.
Remember, it's never too late to live and learn, especially about the trails surrounding Lincoln.
I'm playing with the dog, and I get this robocall from the Social Security Administration saying my card had been suspended and I had to call them back immediately. And that's when I remembered a tip from the AARP Fraud Watch Network. Random robocall? This is a Social Security scam.
Recognize fraud sooner,
Robots.
so your money lives longer. The younger you are, the more you need AARP.
Hi everybody, welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachia. Once again, we'd like to thank our friends at Aging Partners and at LNK TV for producing the show today. It's great to be in the studio, and my guest today is Randy Bretz. Welcome to Live and Learn, Randy.
Hey, it's really kind of fun to be here.
Thanks. Randy's one of the busiest, most connected, sort of happiest, optimistic people that I know, which is, I know he's laughing now, but you retired from Nelnet in what year?
2008.
2008.
No, not that. 2018.
18. Oh, I thought it was.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't know when I retired from Nelnet, but it's been about 10 years ago.
Okay. And
2012.
yeah, okay. That's about the same time I left the university. And here's just a little short list of what Randy's accomplished since then. He worked as an announcer on Nebraska Public Media Radio. He worked with Leadership Lincoln. He brought TEDx to Lincoln and nurtured that into kind of the powerhouse that it is. He has supported his wife through a really significant health crisis. He's a standout in Rotary 14. He's taught at Nebraska Wesleyan. I think he still continues to do that. He works with an international group of young leaders. You started a podcast and a blog. You are tremendously engaged with your church and your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. And you got your neighborhood together outside weekly during the pandemic, just kind of touch base and make sure people are doing okay. And you've interviewed dozens of Lincolnites and about what makes a community work, and you wrote a book. And that's just a start, and I'm exhausted.
I got exhausted. She sent this to me. Look at this. And I read this, and I thought, I actually wrote you back and said, take some of that out, didn't I? And you didn't.
I took out the one thing about the Cascade Fountain.
Okay. Oh, yeah, the Cascade Fountain.
But you live what I would call an active retirement.
I do.
And tell me why you think that's important.
Well, there's several reasons. But I will explain my retirement first.
Okay.
I don't play golf. I don't fish, so this is what I do. And all my grandkids live in other cities, so I'm just plugged into the community. Why that's important? Gosh, I don't know if you're going to ask me that first, but I've got something here that explains that. Let me. This is from. I just got this Harvard's Men Health Watch, and I'm not paid to promote this for Harvard, but it said doing multiple activities, types of activities, improves your cognitive health, which is your thinking. It talks about doing physical exercise for strength training, so on. And I know my wife is going to watch this, and she's going to say you don't do enough of that, and I agree. But also health, worry about what you eat. And then the third is just social, being involved and active with people. And that's what I do. I'm a very social person. I say hi to everybody on the trail when I pass them when I'm walking. And I talk to my dog when we walk, and I'm just social. But that helps keep your brain going. And a lot of us at my age struggle to remember what person's name is or some things like that. So that's why. Plus, I believe in this city. I've lived here for 43 years, and this is a great place.
I think so too. I love this book. Let's talk about your book here.
Okay.
I'm holding it up here. It's called The People of Lincoln, The Framework of Community. And I like that you haven't talked about, it's not a community, but of community. And why don't we talk a little bit about maybe the differences there and why you chose that name, and then tell me a little bit about this book.
Well, it actually started when Jan and I were participating in Leadership Lincoln Executive Series, and we got to know people. And that year, Dean Finnegan invited Peter Kageyama from, I think he lives down in St. Petersburg, Florida. He came up and spoke at some kind of a banquet. And he talked about people called co-creators. And these are people that see something that needs to be done, and they said, well, I'm going to do something about that. I'm doing that right now with Mary Kay Roth. We said, this city needs a storytelling festival. So we didn't ask the city council to appoint us in charge of it or anybody else. We just said, let's do this. Those people are called co-creators. Well, Dean Finnegan said, Randy, we got a lot of co-creators in Lincoln. Why don't you interview some of them and write stories about them? And so I started doing that. And as I was doing that, I started working part-time with Leadership Lincoln and as a retiree. And Mick Hale said, well, Randy, why don't we broaden this and talk to other Leadership Lincoln alumni? So I started interviewing them. And they ran those in the newspaper. And I shared them on my Facebook and those kind of things. And then I was doing those interviews. I started encountering people that were born here, moved away in search of whatever, and then they come back, and I call them boomerangers. And after, I interview people, I write stories about them, and then they run them into the Journal Star. And I thought, maybe I could take some of these and put them together in a book. So that's how it came to be.
Yeah, I really like it. There's what, 16 people?
There's 16, yeah. There's an interesting story there. I picked 15 people I've got about 50 interviews that I've done. And I wanted men and women, I wanted young and old, I wanted racial diversity. So I put 15 together because I thought, well, that's a good number. And I was having coffee with a friend, and she said, well, for sure, Jody at the parking garage is going to be in the book. I thought, oh gosh, I forgot about Jody. So I made her number 16.
Jody's the knitter, correct?
Yeah.
The knitter.
She used to work in Central Garage in downtown Lincoln. And
Yeah.
that's a story. I don't know if you want me to tell that story.
I remember seeing
maybe
her.
you have to get the book.
You have to buy the
You have to
book.
get the book in order to. No, I can tell the story if you want.
But yeah, so I like the idea of the co-creators again. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think makes a co-creator? And
I haven't analyzed that. But I've interviewed a number of them. One of them is Jim King. Jim has been a friend of mine for a long time, and he's a retired professor, and he plays the guitar, the ukulele, and the banjo. And he just said, kids need some fun and music in their birthday parties, so he just goes and plays at birthday parties. And not too long ago, we had the Lincoln Arts Festival downtown. It was hotter than blazes, and the guy sat down there on the street playing his guitar all day long for people.
He was at the East Campus Discovery Days last Saturday.
Yeah,
And
and
playing
he just
that.
does stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but Jim's got an interesting story of how he started doing that. So, and let's see, who else is in my co-creator category? Well, Jody. I'll talk about Jody, who in the parking garage. She was homeless herself, and at one point in time, and she knows what the homeless people need. They need warm clothing. So that's why she knitted. And nobody said, Jody, the people, homeless people need hats and mittens, and so she just started knitting. And I used to park in that garage a lot, and I got to know Jody, and I said, why are you always knitting? And she said, well, I'm doing this for the homeless. And so that's her story.
I think that says a lot about you, though, Randy, because you noticed her. Think of the hundreds of people that drove in and out of that garage every day and just waved their cards, paid their bill, maybe waved at her and drove on and never made another thing wondering why this woman is knitting and what her story is.
Well, and that goes to how I am. I talk to people on the bike trail.
Yep.
Or in the sidewalk, in the grocery store.
Yep.
But that's the way Lincoln is. When we moved here, I remember Jan coming home. We've been here 40-some years. We came from Indiana, which is not considered an unfriendly place, but she came home one day. She said, I'm standing looking at a head of lettuce in the grocery store, and somebody walked up and just started conversation with me about lettuce. And she said, I don't know who you are, but that's part of what I think makes people in Lincoln, makes Lincoln a great place.
I saw a woman at Trader Joe's about a month ago, and her hair, when I first saw her, I was struck by this sweater or something that she was wearing that was handmade and really cool. And then she had really white hair, but as I looked closer, I realized her hair had kind of this sort of rainbow, pale yellow, pale blue, pale. And I looked at her and I thought, that's fabulous. So I said something to her about it. I love your hair. It's really, really cool. And she laughed and she said, my granddaughters did it with Sharpies. And I thought,
With Sharpies?
With
That
Sharpies.
won't wash out.
Well, I thought, that's a really confident person who lets their granddaughters take Sharpies to her hair and is cool enough to just wear it proudly. And I'm sitting there thinking, I wonder if Sharpies would work on my hair. But that's an example of just sort of this random person. And I loved it. I came home from the grocery store and I was just like, oh my God, that was so great. And then I started thinking, well, I hope I made her day by telling her that I thought her hair was cool. And you could tell she was kind of smiling about it and everything. And I don't know that that's a uniquely Lincoln thing, but I do think that like Jan having that encounter about lettuce, or you having an encounter on the trail with somebody about, I don't know, your mutual crazy dogs chasing bunnies or whatever. I think that says a lot for our community that we're not completely wrapped up in our own thing, that we...
I went out to Holmes Lake this morning. You know Mary Kay Roth. I went out and just to catch up with Mary Kay because she walks the trail around Holmes Lake every morning and takes sunrise pictures. And we sat on a bench for a few minutes and talked, and she said, Randy, and I hope I'm not taking her blog away from her because I think she's going to write about this, but she said, Randy, I think sunrise people are friendlier than sunset people. I said, okay. She said, I'm out here every day, or in nice, decent weather, and there are, I don't know, a couple of dozen people out here that I know. I may not know their names, but I know them a little bit. And then there are some that I've gotten to know even better. And, that's just the way people are.
There is that Holmes Park Walker community, I think.
Yeah, well, but you'd find the same thing the mall walkers or on the Rock Island Trail near where you and I live. There's just the same crowd of people. But
yeah.
I'm a believer in connecting. In fact, I did an Ignite talk last year on the value of connecting. And you mentioned my neighborhood. I used to call them honk and wave neighbors. And I think anybody watching out there said, I can identify with that. I know, oh, what's his name down the street? He drives that black car. But they, you know, I didn't know my neighbors. And during COVID, I don't know, I think I saw on TV, the people in Spain were stepping out and applauding the healthcare workers. So I thought, well, I'll do that. And next thing I know, Eddie and Amanda are out. They live on a circle near me. And then Joy and Caleb came out. Ellen next door came out. And by May, we were out there for 15 minutes or so on our sidewalks in the circle, but talking to each other. And then by June, we're in the circle and up to an hour a night, just kind of catching up.
So you did that every night?
Every night from about, well, I started in March, from March until about October.
Wow.
Every night. And
that's fantastic.
well, and I don't think we were the only ones. I've talked to other people around I'm just a guy that lives on a street that likes to write stories. So I wrote stories about it. And
Yeah.
the Journal Star picked that up, and then Reader's Digest saw it and said, oh, that's the nicest place in Nebraska. So,
It is the nicest place in Nebraska, or at least the nicest place in 68502.
well, we're better than the country club area where you live.
Oh, that's right, because we have that, you know, that invisible line called the trail.
Yeah.
So anyway, Randy, this is great. You know what? We're out of time.
Oh my gosh.
I know that you
this
and I.
has been fun.
I know you and I could probably talk for 2 hours.
Well, I had
we
these
actually,
8 other things I wanted to talk about.
And we actually did talk for 2 hours the other day at the mill.
Uh-huh.
And it was fun because we're sitting at the mill, and I cannot tell you the number of people that came up and said hi to Randy, because Randy's a co-creator and pretty interesting, connected fellow.
And just an extrovert.
Yeah.
Off the chart extrovert. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks for being here. I want to remind our viewers that it's never too late to live and learn about your community and being a part of it.
My kid has been asking for this hot new gaming thing, and I was like, okay, he had a birthday coming up anyway. So I finally find the video game online, in stock. Thing is, it was from this shoddy website full of typos. That's when I remembered a tip I got from the AARP Fraud Watch Network. Bogus website, this is a shopping scam. Got us matching t-shirts instead.
Recognize fraud sooner,
He loves his.
so your money lives longer. The younger you are, the more you need AARP.
Hello everyone and welcome to Live and Learn. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. We have quite a treat for you today. There is a special gem in the city of Lincoln, and it is called the Sunken Gardens. And if you have not been to the Sunken Gardens this year, you are missing something. They have lots of great things and some new things. We're going to talk about all of those things today with the park horticulturist Steve Nozzle, who is joining us today. Steve, you know probably more about this park than anybody. You've been here since 1976, right?
Yeah, yes, I have. You've done your homework.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
The park has a real interesting history. Tell us just a little bit about the history and how it sort of came about.
Well, the hole in the ground, as it was called by the original designers, started with Antelope Creek coming through here off 27th Street and exiting to the north on D Street. And then in about, I would say 1903, they decided to move the creek across the street to what we now call Antelope Creek, and it left this depression. So it just sort of sat here for about 25 years, which allowed the neighborhood fathers to throw as much garbage into it as they could. And so they called it a dump, which is what it was, a dumping site. It was not a landfill. And in 1930, during the Depression, the city commissioner, Ernest Bear, decided that maybe this should become a location of something of beauty for the city, to kind of help people come out of the Depression a little bit, or at least feel better about themselves. He was a commissioner, and he found the funds, hired like 250 men to do all kinds of odd jobs around the city, and at the time created a gang. They called them a gang, not a work crew, of men to come down and build Sunken Gardens. So that's kind of how it all came about. It was all done with the intent of making people in Lincoln feel good about their community and help bringing a garden into the the city of Lincoln.
Yeah, it's pretty unique for the city. Not all cities have anything quite like this. And one of the things that I find fascinating, and I think it is sort of come over time with you and Alice Reed, who have been the main parts of this, at least in the last 40 years or so, is the color.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The color is just spectacular.
Well, that's the whole intent of the garden. We call it chromotherapy or color therapy. And the whole idea is to find colors that really make people feel good about their community, about themselves. And you can actually see people express themselves with the color that they see. Little kids will be running down the sidewalk screaming with excitement and all that. It really does make a big difference. And to get the color, we use annuals. That's how we do it. Now these are tropicals. Down in Belize, they would be a perennial, but in Nebraska, they're not. We have winter.
Yes, we do.
Takes care of that. So.
Right. It's kind of a spiritual place, isn't it, don't you think?
Oh, very much. It's amazing. I've met people from every branch of religion. Of course, there's about 4,000 religions in the world, but you meet everything from the Dalai Lama's teachers to Greek Orthodox. They just come down and kind of meditate down in here. And along with people, you'll see, since you bring it up, you'll see people come down that you can tell are ill, that maybe an older couple, and one will have maybe a scarf on their head. You can see their hair is falling out. And it's kind of a last stop in their life.
Yeah.
And about 2 months later, one of the partners will come back and the other one's gone.
Yeah.
Then we always find a pile of ashes somewhere, which you're not supposed to do. But
right.
It makes it very spiritual. There's a lot of people that regard this garden as a final stop in their life.
Yeah. Well, you've done some fun things this year. Let's take a little walking tour, especially for people who haven't been down yet this year. Of course, we want to encourage them to do come down and see things, but let's take a little walk around and check out some of the new things.
Okay, good.
Okay, so the theme for the Sunken Gardens is Alice in Wonderland, which I just think is absolutely
it's actually
fascinating.
a Wonderland.
A Wonderland,
I didn't want to get into copyright issues,
That's
but
a good idea.
It is based on the Alice in Wonderland, and I used the Johnny Depp movie because of the screen setting, that the landscape settings that they had. It was so colorful. I just admire people in Hollywood that do that. I don't know how they create a lot of that. So that's where we got a lot of our color ideas from, is out of the movie. And so yes, there's the Queen of Hearts behind us. That's a heart for the Queen of Hearts. Yes. The Mad Hatter's hat is on our left. And then throughout the entire garden, there are 8 raised boxes which represent the tea tables during, late for tea. And on the boxes are supposed to be plants that represent the cakes that were on that were in that set. And hopefully the dichondra, which is the silver stuff growing down the side of the boxes, will cover them by the end of fall, so it'll look like a tablecloth.
The hearts look like they're kind of interesting to create. How are you creating the diamonds? Maybe easy, but the spades and the
you can see the spades, and that's the club behind us. And what we'll do, once the plants grow, we start carving out what's growing into them. So we'll actually carve out the shapes of the plants, if that helps a little bit.
Okay, very cool.
That's how they get to see it.
So we'll talk about the boxes a little bit in a minute, because I think that's fascinating. But something else that we had talked about earlier was how you had treated the ground with the biochar. Tell us a little bit about that without getting too technical, because I'm not too technical.
Yeah, I can get technical. The biochar is an interesting concept. As we all know, there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere, and everybody's looking for a process or a method to pull it out of the atmosphere. What a lot of people don't realize is that it should be in the ground or in the oceans, in the water. And as we get warmer, or as we burn more fossil fuels, we put more CO2 in the atmosphere. So I'm not sure who discovered it. I think it's an ancient technique that that the people in the Amazon discovered years ago, but they have found that if you burn organic matter in a low oxygen atmosphere, most of the CO2 is retained in the charcoal. Oh. That is basically, it's a simple way of putting what biochar is. And then I was given, I think, 6 great big bags of biochar, and we spread it throughout the entire garden, just a little bit on, I think it's just about 3 or 4 cups per square foot, something like that. We turned it into the soil with our rototillers, and the CO2 is just back in the soil. I know a lot of people have worried about it, but as I've explained even to you the other day, I said that, you know, when we were kids and we had fish aquariums, we had the little box on the back with the charcoal in it. Didn't kill the fish. It should not hurt the plants. And so that's the experiment. We're watching to see if the biochar will be sensitive, or if these plants will be sensitive to it. And so far, I don't believe so. We have had some disease problems down here, but I think it's because of the weather. It's hot, it's humid.
It is.
And summer came a month early this year, so things didn't get to grow. They're not as mature as they should be, but so far I have not had a real big problem with it. And I think it's a cool idea. What a way to put CO2 back into the soil. It's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do a lot of composting down here. I know lots of amateur gardeners do that same kind of a thing. What are you doing that is anything different?
Well, a little bit different. We have been composting sunken gardens probably for the last 35, maybe even 40 years. In the beginning, what we would do is just collect raw leaves. I had some old chicken manure that was about 20 years old, and we put it in. But then we started to realize we had such an expanse on here, we needed to do something bigger. So what we do is we create our own, we call it Betty Crocker's Mix, but it has grass clippings, ground up leaves in it that the street sweepers pick up. It has wood chip shavings, and it has stump grindings for when the forestry stumps our trees. It also has horse magic in it. You know, we get some horse manure and put it in there. That's clean horse manure. And we let it compost for about 2 years, and we put it on every fall during the put the beds to bed event. We put on about 3 to 4 inches of it. So basically this garden, the height of all the plants and the health of all these plants is created by the nutrients that are available from the organic matter in the soil. We don't really fertilize. We do fertilize the plants when they're in the greenhouse, but we use a natural organic fertilizer, not a chemical-based one. And so for the most part, this is an organic garden.
Very cool. Let's take a look at the boxes, because I think they are fascinating in so many ways.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we're here by one of the 8 boxes that you guys have put in this year, and I hope everybody's as interested as I am about this, because I think they're just fascinating, not just from the perspective of that they're trying to be the table of the queen and they're supposed to look like cake on top of it, but how you created these things I think is just fascinating.
Oh, it was amazing how it turned out. Yeah, well, the trouble was when Alice goes, I want the tea tables with cakes on top, and I'm going, I had to think this one out. And so what these boxes basically are a spin-off of a German gardening technique called Hugelkultur, and asked me to spell it, Hugelkultur or something like that. But anyway, the boxes are a third full of logs that have been soaked in water, and then there's probably a 2 to 3 inch layer of leaves on them, and then we put the soil on them. The intent of the soaked logs is to keep moisture in the soil, so that, you know, most people don't realize that when it rains or the irrigation systems are on, they really don't go in the boxes very well. And so it's a unique idea on how to make water readily available to plant material. And most of us, they have containers at home. Every now and then you lose one because you just forget to water it. And it's real important that these work for us. And so it's kind of it's an example of another way to garden. Now I have a Hugelkultur garden in my backyard that I grow tomatoes on, and I've never had to water it. I do water it, but you don't have to. It's just full of old, rotten, moist logs, and the roots go down in there and pull their moisture out. Kind of a cool idea.
Very wonderful. Tell us about some of the plants that are on here that are being set up as the cake.
Well, what Alice did is she got in the greenhouse with her crew and she started looking for plants that would look something like a cake. So the ones that have the kind of bluish green leaves that are sort of open, those are kale. And they do very well in Nebraska. The bugs don't seem to bother them very much, and they're going to get nice and colorful. The petunia-looking flower in front is not a petunia; it's a Bidens, and it's just a small little, I should say, petunia-looking flower. The ones that I'm interested in, though, are the silver ones that are just starting to hang down. Those are Dichondra silver falls, and by the end of the year, those will cover the entire box, all the way down the side. I sort of saw an example like this in Washington, D.C. years ago, and I always wanted to try it. And so that will make the tablecloth cover. She has, that's an asparagus fern in the middle that looks like a foxtail.
Oh, yeah.
That we grow. I'm not sure what some of the other ones are. It's just she has a lot of different sedums in there and different things that she thought would do very well in a situation where they may or may not get water. That kind of, I call it bronze color or purple leaf coming up like this is called a pineapple lily plant. And then there's the purple heart, that purple leaf on the other side. All of those do very well in a very hot, droughty situation. So the intent was to put something in here that didn't require a lot of water.
Yeah. The same height, kind of interesting all the way around too.
Oh yeah, well that's part of the design concept. So when Alice and I are designing this garden and we're doing patterns, the plant shape, height have got to be about similar, and it has to be something that will live in sunken gardens also.
Sure.
We're kind of our own unique climate here.
And this will be a one-time deal, right? Once they're done here,
I'm going to take them down.
You're going to take them down. So
Yeah.
we're going to encourage people to come out and
by
take a look
August
at these.
they should be full. I hope.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so this isn't something that is new, but it really is one of my favorite spots to come here all the time. And you call this the lily pond, the fish pond, the combination?
It's a living pond.
A living pond, okay,
And
I like that.
by that,
like that.
what it refers to is the fact that the pond is never drained. So the fish that are in here stay in here all year long. They just go down to the bottom in the wintertime. They don't freeze, they're cold-blooded, they acclimate.
Do you have to do anything to the water? Because it does freeze, doesn't it?
Well, there's a bubbler going on behind
Oh, all
you,
right.
and that'll keep an air hole
Okay.
open. We have skimmers on either side, but the bubbler is what we rely on to keep the air flowing. So if you keep oxygen going into the water in the wintertime, they're gonna be fine.
Okay, so tell me all. What is living in here? We have the fish, and we'll
We had
get
the
some
fish.
shots of the
So
fish
all
because
of
they're
these-
very cool.
All of these water lilies are basically hardy water lilies. This is a Colorado water lily in front of us, given to us years ago by a gentleman, and they do very well. They're rooted into the rock down below.
Oh, okay.
And they do fine. And you can tell they're just loving it in the pond. The beauty of a water lily is they have hollow stems and sort of holes in their leaves, so they help pull methane out of the muck in the bottom of the pond. They help clean it up a little bit. So I would say in about the end of this month or probably next month, these will start to die back, and Alice and her crew will come in and they'll pull all the leaves off of all these, and about a week later it's full again.
Wow.
So that's the maintenance that they have to do on them, and it's because of the aggressive growth that they go through, but they're just so healthy. We've talked to different people that have aquatic ponds throughout the state, and they have not seen anything quite like this. And I think it has to do with just the concentrated area in the fish that are in it that helps supply nutrients to them.
And it helps, feeds the color concept because you've got pink, you've got, I guess that's a lavender, you've got white, you've got a darker,
sort of mauve or maroon, yeah. And we have koi in here that love people. I think they can hear us, obviously, or feel our vibration as we walk up, and they think we're going to feed them. But for the most part, they're always moving. That's the cool thing about koi. They don't just sit there like a bass waiting for something to swim by. They're always moving and looking and hunting. I don't see any out right now. They're usually on the edge over there, right in behind us. And
are they the orange looking?
Oh, there's every color in here.
Okay.
There's golden ones. There's some of these we've had around for a long time. And as you talk and as you visit, they eventually come over and say hi. They'll start begging for food. They control people.
But you don't want anybody to feed them.
No, they're on a diet. And the diet is such that it doesn't cloud the water. If people feed them bread, which they shouldn't, or anything like that, that's too high, but too much sugar in it, too much carbon, and the waste that they produce in will make the water all green and yucky and all that.
Yeah.
And so, they're on a special diet.
Okay, very cool. Well, it's just a great place, and again, it's we got really nice benches that are in the shade here for people to be able to come and just really at this angle you can just take in the whole thing. It's just
Absolutely.
it's just a great shot.
It is, and in the fall when it's in its glory and it's really full, this is a fun place to sit.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
also one of the warmest parts of the garden for those of us who like heat. It's where I hang out anyway.
Yeah, didn't you say that it's this part of the park that is sort of like Belize?
It is.
Temperature-wise,
It is.
or the way that it's designed to
It
hold
is.
that
I
heat
used
in?
to have a guy here, his name was Anthony, that used to work for me, who was from Belize. And he goes, this is just like home. He said, the plants are the same, the climate's the same, and it's just like, it's a jungle. And so the trees to the south block a lot of the wind. Now, the wind you're feeling is coming down the sidewalk that's open, but they'll over, a little bit more to our west over here, there's not a lot of wind. And so it creates its own microclimate, hot, humid. And that's what these plants just love. That's what keeps them going.
Wonderful. Well, another one of my favorite spots is the White Garden. Let's drift on up to the White Garden and
Absolutely.
talk about that.
We should do that.
All right, we are here at the entrance of the White Garden, which again is one of my favorite spots.
Mine too.
And then tell us a little bit about what we have behind us here, because this is eventually going to be just white and gorgeous.
This is a collection of white caladiums called White Wonder. And I don't remember how many hundreds of them we purchased. We buy them out of Florida, get them as a bulb, and Alice and her crew grow them out in the greenhouses. But the whole idea in this area is how could we brighten this corner of the world? And so these white leaved plants love the shade over here. And this is a natural entrance. This is where a lot of wedding parties start. They come in right over here. So it's the beginning of the White Garden.
Very cool. Well, let's walk on up. What was the inspiration for this? Do you remember?
Well, the inspiration for the White Garden was years ago. I came, of course, when you design, you don't design during normal hours. I was here about midnight one night, and I'm walking through this area up to my right, and I saw this little flower dangling out, and it caught the moonlight.
Oh, wow.
And I remember calling Alice. I don't think I called her that night. I probably waited until the next morning. I said, there's this flower that picked up the moonlight, and it almost looked like a moon garden. Well, and that was the first idea of creating something that would pick up reflection at night. So when you walk through this at night, the white shows up because there's really no lights up here. And that was the beginning of it. And then as we redesigned the garden, we got into the concept of white gardens like they do in Europe, and thus the White Healing Garden.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And you've got some new things that we have up here this year, is that right?
Well, yeah, we're always trying something different. Part of being a horticulturist is you don't want to always use the same plant in the same spot year in and year out. You always want to try something different. So the caladiums this year are a little bit different than what we've used in the past. And then in the beds behind us around the Statue Reveille, that is a new concept too. Some new impatiens have gone into that area. So something that we hope will do well in the sun and the weather, that whatever the weather is that Nebraska will give us this year.
Right.
I never know.
No, you never know anymore.
No, not from hour to hour.
Right. Well, let's walk up and take a quick look.
Sure.
All right, so we are standing now in the middle of the White Garden, and before we talk about some of the things that's going on up here, I think it's important that we let everybody know how accessible this place is. That you have really designed a system that is allows almost anybody to come up here.
Absolutely, it is fully ADA accessible. There are 3 sets of stairs here, of course, but you can get into the back White Garden, or you could get in off of C Street or the main entrance. It's all ADA accessible, and it has the ramps for wheelchairs and all that. Really important, even the back top gravel path that we walked up earlier has a plastic netted system in it that allows it to become very solid so that anybody can go up it in a wheelchair, electric wheelchair, or in a walker and not stumble. It's very important.
And you've got rock on top of that, so it's a real easy
It's easy to
path.
navigate, yes.
Yeah, I think that's great because we've seen lots of folks around in some wheelchairs, and it really makes it available to everybody.
Well, it's a healing garden, and
Indeed.
you want to get up here to heal, you have to make it accessible.
Right,
So.
absolutely. Well, we have the statue behind us. Let's talk a little bit about the statue. I just think it's fabulous from all angles. We're right here pretty much in the front.
The statue in front of us is called Reveille. It was created by a Dr. Southwick who lived on the East Coast, and Alice and I had the fortune of meeting him years ago when we were just getting ready to think about rebuilding Sunken Gardens. And he said he wanted to do something, and we thought he was going to maybe contribute dollars, and what he did is contributed the concept. So he had a small statue that he created, took it, and he went over, I believe, to Italy and found a foundry over there that would make a full-size statue. So as you can tell by looking at this bronze, it's not the typical that you would see in the United States. It's a little bit more ancient looking, it has a different patina to it, and it is one of my favorite. It's so nicely done. Reveille is a depiction of his wife waking the children up in the morning.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Kind of a cool idea, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Very cool. And it really does, it just adds so much to the meditative
it's a wonderful
feel
art piece.
for being up here.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on here. We have some impatiens here, and as I understand, these are new.
They are new. We have two kinds of impatiens in the garden. We had a newer one called Bounce that we put in and found out it didn't do that well in the soil conditions this year. There are, of course, diseases in soil, and when you're organic, as we are, we don't treat or kill the disease in the soil. We try to find a plant that can live with it. So we tried one plant called Bounce. It didn't do well. So then we came in with this white sun patiens called Compact, and they were just planted, I would think, 2 days ago. And they should fill it. It'll take them about a week or two to acclimate, and then we'll have a rather full garden in the middle of the summer. So what Alice and her crews do when they're down here, along with myself, is we're continually looking at what's working and what is not working. And if we see failure in any way, we come in and instantly change it out. And that's typical of what you'll find in a botanical garden anywhere around the country. If there's death, it's like, okay, let's figure it out. So we have enough plant material in our greenhouse to cover that.
Nice. So we have lots of new things planted back here, right?
Yes, we do. We have a walking path, but we should go take a look at it.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. So what are some of the things that we're going to see as we walk through here?
Oh, what we did, I was in a garden somewhere up north, I don't know how I was at, and they had this huge display of hostas. So we filled this whole thing up with hostas.
Wow, okay.
And of course we have a few weeds in here, but we put more caladiums up in here. We have some recovered old benches that we had in storage from one of the parks that was remodeled, and a recovered planter.
Oh, those are both nice.
They sort of fit into the area.
Lots of little planters back here.
And those were donated by a lady here about a year and a half ago. And these stone on either side of the walk, these are cobble. These are from the original alleys in the city of Lincoln. And so everything up here has some sort of historic presence.
This is nice.
This is Kneeling Figure. We put this statue in 2 years ago. And it's sort of a lot of people just come up and just sit up here.
Oh yeah,
and reflect.
See that?
During the pandemic, the school teachers that couldn't go to school and teach, we found a lot of them just sitting up here crying their eyes out. It was like, okay, it was solace. It was a place for them to just, get their thoughts together.
Right.
And there's one more area that we just created. I call it a terminus. It's on this little path over here to your right. Careful of the tree roots sticking out of the... Whoa. There was one right there.
Yep, I grabbed it. Or it grabbed me.
Yeah. And so this is just a little overlook on the right here. If you go up into this, if we go up in here.
Oh, all right.
So you'll see this a lot in Oriental gardens, in Japanese gardens. They'll just take you to a point and stop. where you can overview what's going on. This was just installed. This shows you how behind we are. We just installed this 2 days ago, just went in.
Wow.
So Alice, these are Dracaena, and they have chlorophytum plants below them. She created those in the greenhouse over the winter and getting ready to stick them into the ground. Again, we are using the sun pations up in here, which can handle this much shade. And then we're surrounded by hostas. We have a lot of hydrangeas on the left, and then I have some Japanese maples over here we're trying to get a little bit more mature. And then I've got a wall of green going on to kind of hide the fence back in where the neighbors live over here. It's just another little area up in the garden.
Yeah.
I wanted to utilize as much of the garden as we could.
Sure. Well, it is just so cool and so wonderful. Thank you so much for taking us on our tour and giving us a little bit of history and some information.
Thank you.
Very cool. And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Jerry Renaud. Stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, it's never too late to live and learn.